Let's talk about this superhero in the Bible. There's a man from Zorah, and his name was Noah. And him and his wife was barren. She couldn't have any children. Angel of the Lord actually appeared to her and told her, "You are going to have a son, and he shall not drink strong drink. He shall not have his hair cut. He is going to be a Nazarite. He shall not touch anything unclean or eat anything unclean." That's how Nazarites are. The angel of the Lord said, "And he will deliver the Israelite people from the Philistines." So she tells her husband, the husband, that, look, this angel of the Lord came. He said, "I'm going to have this son. He's going to be a Nazarite. A razor shall never touch his head." And the man's like, "Well, we need to pray and let's see what God tells us we need to do." God actually honored that prayer, and he came back. But the angel of the Lord came back to the woman again. The woman runs and gets her husband and brings him to the angel of the Lord. Now, at first, the man didn't know it was the angel of the Lord until he saw the angel of the Lord ascend in the flame of the altar, and they fell flat on their face. That's when they knew for sure this was the angel of the Lord. She ends up having the son. It came to pass, and his name was Samson. And as he grew, the Lord blessed him. So what I really like about this story is that God knows us before we're even born. So he already had Samson's life prepared out, what he's supposed to be doing, everything about him before Samson was even born. And God is true today as he was yesterday, 2,000 years ago. So he knows everything about us. Every hair on our head, the Bible says, all about us. And he has plans for us. Now, the Israelites and the Philistines, of course, did not get along. And Samson is grown up at this point, and he sees this woman who's a Philistine woman and falls head over heels, love at first sight. And she is a Philistine. His parents was not happy about it. Samson says, "I want to take her for my wife," even though he went against his parents' wishes and God's. However, God is going to use this situation, as he often does when we mess up. He will use a situation for his purpose. The Philistines at this time overruled the Israelites. Samson is out walking, and this lion comes, and the Spirit of the Lord comes upon Samson, and he kills this lion with his bare hands. After some time, and he had been visiting that lady that he fell head over heels in love with, as he's walking back, he sees that carcass of that lion, and inside that lion is bees and honey. Now, he's not supposed to touch anything that's dead, any kind of corpse or anything, but he gets in there, gets him some honey, eats it, and takes some to his parents, but he didn't tell them where it came from because he already knew that he wasn't supposed to get it from there. Now, in Deuteronomy 7:3-4, God did not want him to marry this woman because they are other people, the Philistines people who served other gods, and he knew that, hey, they could turn my people into serving other gods. So Samson started thinking about this honey that he got from a carcass, and he loves riddles. So he has this big old party, right? First of all, he shouldn't have been around anybody that's been drinking because, he could fall into temptation. But he put himself in that situation, and he says to everybody, "If you can guess this riddle, I will give you a change of apparel," and offers this reward. So if they can guess it within 7 days. So the wife of Samson, her people, the Philistine people, say, "Listen, you need to get that out of him. Find out what the answer is." So she begs and cries, "You hate me, you don't love me," on and on for 7 straight days, until Samson finally gives in and says, "Fine, I'll tell you." She tells the people, and her people and the men tell Samson the answer. And he knew, there I told my wife, and she has went and told these people. So he gets so angry, and the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him, and he goes and kills 30 Philistine people and takes their clothes and gives it to the people who won the riddle. So that's how he settled that debt. It gets even crazier because after some time, after all this happened, the wife of Samson's father gives her over to Samson's best friend, his companion. Samson finds out about it, and he goes and slaughters all these Philistines. It's like, "Look, I only did that because I thought you hated her." Now, I don't know why the father said that he thought that Samson hated his wife. Maybe from what the wife was putting into the father's head, he hates me or whatever. But he says, why don't you take my younger daughter? Is she not better than the one you have? So Samson, being so mad, he goes and gets 300 foxes. Now, he catches 300 foxes and takes torches and ties them to their tails and lets them loose into their fields. And that just burned up their grains, their vineyards, and their groves. Now, the Philistines, after this, retaliate back, and they go and they burn up Samson's wife and her father in the house. Now, Samson wants to even the score again. He goes and slaughters all of them and says, I have nowhere to go. So he goes into these cliffs, these rock cliffs, and he stays there for a while until his people come and get him, and they say, look, you have caused so much problems. You know that Philistine rules over us, and we are going to bound you and tie you up and take you there. And Samson's like, fine, I'll go, but you promise that you don't kill me. And they're like, we're not going to kill you. We're just going to hand you over to them and let them do with you what they will. They deliver Samson. He turns around and he sees this jawbone of a donkey. He takes that jawbone of a donkey and slaughters 1,000 people with it. So like I said, he may be not in the right for what he's been doing, for retaliating, but God is using his anger for his purpose, which is getting rid of the Philistines. Now, he becomes so thirsty and so dehydrated after all this that he cries out to God, are you going to let me die of thirst even after all this? I've killed all these people, these Philistines. God actually breaks the cliff rocks open and gives water to Samson, and he drinks, and he's now all revived. Actually judged Israel for like another 20 years in the days of the Philistines. So after some time, Samson goes down to this place called Gaza, which I'm sure we've all heard of. And he sees this woman, again, falls madly in love, head over heels. That was his problem. And this woman was actually a harlot, a prostitute. But he fell head over heels with her, and her name was Delilah. This city had all these gates and bars, and and Samson just takes them and picks them up and throws them over his shoulder. These men were like, Delilah, you need to find out how this man is so strong. Like, he's got supernatural strength. Like, find out what is going on. So she does, because she is not a godly woman. She is she idols a different god, so she could care less about being faithful to Samson, even though he loved her. So Samson plays around with her mind and says, okay, if you bring me 7 greens, you'll see that if you tie me up, then that's what it is. That's where my strength comes from. So she does. She brings these 7 greens, ties him up. He's just playing her, because at this point he's like, I'll just tell you whatever you want to hear right now. These greens were actually like rope, and he after being tied up, he just breaks them with no problem, knowing that the Philistines are there to capture him, knowing that Delilah is the one that told it. He cries, you've mocked me and lied to me. Now she's done this to him, trying to get him captured, but she's saying, and you lied to me. Please tell me the real truth of where you get your strength from. And she just keeps on and on. He says, okay, I'll tell you. So if you bind me really with new rope, it has to be new rope, then I'll lose my strength. Well, guess what? She does. She actually bounds him with new rope. Now he's sitting here watching this to see if he can escape. Of course, the Philistines are waiting there to capture him, and he knows it, and he breaks the ropes. Cries again, you have mocked me. You have made a fool out of me. Why are you doing this? Please tell me your strength again. This time, and don't lie. Tells her this time, if you take 7 locks of my hair and twist it up and weave it and bound me, I'll lose my strength. She does, and says, look, Samson, the Philistines are here against you. They're coming to get you. He just rises out of his sleep. It didn't work either. He is so blinded by love that he can't see what's happening. Again, she cries and mocks him for several days until he is just like, oh my goodness. He is just worn completely out. She has just mentally drained him, and finally he tells her, I am a Nazarite. There is not to be a razor to ever touch my head, because I will lose all my strength. Delilah finally realizes, I think this is it. He has told me everything from his heart. She calls the Philistines to be waiting on him. She causes him to fall asleep, and while he's asleep, they come and shave his head. And that's when he gets up to, use all his strength, and he can't. the Lord actually departed from him. This is the sad part. The Philistines take him and gouge out his eyes. They bound him with brass and make him actually do a lot of physical work. Him as a slave. Now the Philistines are having this big party to worship their God, and everybody's there, and they're doing all this worshiping to, praise their gods for delivering Samson to them. And they have Samson out there being the spectacle. Look, we've gouged his eyes out. We forced him into slave labor. Look at him. And they all mock him, make fun of him. And some says, look, I am so tired. Can you just put me between these two pillars and let me stand? These two big columns. Just let me stand there. There was about 3,000 or more people in here having this big party, mocking Samson and worshiping their God. And Samson cries out to the Lord, strengthen me this one last time, God. Strengthen me this one last time. I can avenge them for taking out my eyes. He is in between these two big posts, and he pushes with all of his strength. He knows he's going to die too, but he's begging for God to just give him the strength this one last time. And he pushes on those pillars both at the same time, and the building comes crashing down. All the men and women that was in here was more than all that he had slaughtered throughout his whole time in life. The story is a sad story, and it's clearly a story of lost potential. He could have been one of the most used men of the Old Testament Bible, but he let lust and blind love and not listening and obeying God to get in the way of what God's purpose was for him in his life. And in the end, he was destroyed along with the Philistines. And even though God used that for his purpose, he just missed out on all of his potential he had, because God had gave him supernatural strength. Samson was a one-man army, an army of God, but like I said, he didn't use all the potential that God gave him, and sometimes we don't use the potential that God gives us. I also learned through this story that God is faithful even through our flaws. Even when we sin, God is still faithful. To know what the marriage counselors of today would say to Samson and Delilah. The Bible tells us that we should not unite with ungodly people, but if we have, then we need to live that life of godliness and hope and pray that they will come to know God. He was always going to be faithful to her people and to her gods. And he, praise the Lord, was faithful to his God even in the end. Even though he knew he was going to die, he was still faithful, and God was faithful to him. Life was marked by tragedy in the end because he did not follow God's purpose and plan for his life.